Tonight I'm going to share something with you that will forever change how you think about sleep, rest, and what the human body is truly capable of. What you're about to discover has been hidden in plain sight for 40,000 years, buried in caves, encoded in our DNA, and deliberately ignored by mainstream science because it challenges everything we think we know about human limitations. But here's the thing, and I need you to really hear this. What I'm about to reveal isn't just ancient history. It's a blueprint for the most profound sleep transformation you've ever experienced. The Ice Age humans didn't just survive winter, they mastered it. They achieved levels of rest and recovery that would seem supernatural to us today. And the most shocking part? You still carry their genetic programming. Before we dive into this incredible journey together, I want you to do something for me. If you're tired of restless nights, if you're exhausted by the modern life's endless demands, if you're ready to discover what your ancestors knew about true rest, hit that like button right now. It tells me you're serious about this transformation, and it helps other sleep-deprived souls find these ancient secrets. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because what we're exploring tonight is just the beginning. I'll be sharing more revolutionary sleep discoveries that mainstream wellness won't touch. And I want you to comment below. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you in New York at midnight? London at 5 AM? Tokyo watching the sunrise? I want to know who's joining this global community of sleep revolutionaries. Now, settle in comfortably, dim those lights, maybe put on some gentle background noise if you prefer, because we're about to embark on a journey that will take you from the sterile confines of modern sleep advice into the profound wisdom of our Ice Age ancestors. What you're about to learn will challenge everything sleep experts have taught you. It will reveal why modern humans are chronically exhausted despite having the most comfortable beds in history. And it will give you access to sleep techniques so powerful that prehistoric humans survived conditions that would kill us in days. But I must warn you, once you understand what we've lost, what we've forgotten, what we've been taught to ignore about our own biology, you'll never look at sleep the same way again. You'll realize that every restless night, every morning when you wake up tired, every afternoon energy crash is actually your body crying out for something we used to know instinctively. Are you ready? Because the rabbit hole goes deeper than you ever imagined. Chapter 1: The Revolutionary Discovery. The story I'm about to tell you began in a limestone cave in northern Spain, in a place that would become ground zero for the most controversial discovery in human sleep research. It's called Cima de los Huesos, the Pit of Bones, and what there is still. Scientists found there's been quietly revolutionizing our understanding of human capabilities for decades. But here's what they don't want you to know about this discovery. Dr. Elena Vasquez was examining the bones of prehistoric adolescents when she noticed something that should have been impossible. These weren't just any bones. They were the remains of humans who lived 400,000 years ago, in conditions so harsh that survival itself was a daily miracle. But what she saw in those ancient calcium deposits told a story that mainstream archaeology has been desperately trying to suppress. The bones showed harris lines, dense bands that form when growth is interrupted by severe stress or malnutrition. But these lines weren't random. They appeared in perfect seasonal patterns, cycling year after year with clockwork precision. Every single winter, these ancient humans experienced a physiological shutdown so profound that their very bones recorded it like rings in a tree. What Dr. Vasquez realized would change everything we thought we knew about human potential. These weren't just people enduring hard times, these were humans who had unlocked a biological superpower that we've forgotten how to access. They were entering states of metabolic slowdown to hibernation that their bodies could survive months on minimal food while their minds journey to realms we can barely imagine. But here's where it gets controversial, and why you won't hear this on mainstream sleep podcasts. When Dr. Vasquez published her preliminary findings suggesting that early humans might have hibernated, the scientific establishment went into damage control mode. Why? Because if humans could naturally hibernate, it would prove that our modern approach to sleep, to winter, to dealing with scarcity and stress is not just wrong, so it's actively harmful. Think about it. If your ancestors could slow their metabolism at will, could sleep for days in states of profound restoration, could survive impossible conditions through biological adaptations we're told are impossible. What does that say about the sleep medications, the light therapy, the expensive mattresses, and white noise machines we're told we need? It says we've been looking in completely the wrong direction. The cave paintings found near these hibernation sites tell an even more incredible story. Animals rendered with impossible accuracy, handprints placed with mysterious purpose, symbols that seem to map out altered states of consciousness. These weren't created by people in normal waking awareness. These were the visions of minds that had learned to journey between worlds, to access knowledge through dream states that lasted not hours, but weeks. But wait, it gets even more mind-blowing. Recent genetic analysis has revealed that we still carry the hibernation genes. They are dormant in most of us, suppressed by modern lifestyle choices, but they're there, waiting. The torpor genes that allow bears to sleep through winter, that enable ground squirrels to slow their heartbeat to nearly nothing. Variants of these same genes exist in your DNA right now. What if I told you that the chronic exhaustion plaguing modern society isn't a sleep disorder at all? What if it's actually your hibernation genes trying to activate, your body desperately attempting to access ancient survival mechanisms that are artificial lights, constant heating and year-round food availability have disrupted? The implications are staggering and controversial. Because if this is true, and the evidence is mounting that it is, then everything we've been taught about sleep optimization is not just incomplete, it's counterproductive. Your ancestors didn't need 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep because they understood something we've forgotten. Sleep isn't just about duration, it's about depth. It's about accessing states of consciousness so profound that time becomes irrelevant. Healing accelerates beyond normal human limits, and the mind can journey to places that provide wisdom, creativity, and restoration impossible in ordinary awareness. Coming up, we're going to explore the forbidden research that proves humans can still access these ancient sleep superpowers. But first, I need to know, are you starting to question everything you thought you knew about sleep? If this revelation is already shifting your perspective, hit that like button and comment below. Have you ever experienced unusually deep sleep during winter months? Sleep so profound you lost track of time entirely. Your body might be trying to remember something important. Chapter 2: The Forbidden Theory. What I'm about to share with you has been actively suppressed by the mainstream sleep research for over 20 years. Not because it's false, but because it's so revolutionary that accepting it would require dismantling billions of dollars in sleep industry profits and admitting that indigenous cultures understood human biology better than our most advanced laboratories. The forbidden theory is this: modern humans are living in a state of chronic sleep deprivation, not because we don't sleep enough, but because we've forgotten how to sleep correctly. Thomas Ware's groundbreaking research at the National Institute of Mental Health proved something extraordinary. When he removed artificial light from people's lives completely, no electric lights, no screens, no LED displays, their sleep patterns didn't just improve, they transformed into something that seemed to come from another species entirely. Within weeks, participants developed what he called biphasic sleep. Two distinct periods of deep rest separated by a twilight state of profound awareness. But here's the part that made the pharmaceutical industry nervous. People in this natural sleep state required no sleep aids, woke up completely refreshed, and reported levels of mental clarity and emotional stability that surpassed anything achieved through modern sleep optimization. Even more shocking, the twilight period between sleep phases was characterized by extraordinary creativity, profound spiritual experiences, and what participants could only describe as knowing things they had never learned. Sound familiar? It should, because this is exactly how our Ice Age ancestors slept. But Dr. Ware's research revealed something even more controversial. The people who adapted most quickly to this ancient sleep pattern were those who had previously been diagnosed with seasonal affective disorder, chronic fatigue, and treatment-resistant insomnia. In other words, the people our medical system considered broken were actually the ones whose biology was trying hardest to return to its natural state. This is why you won't hear about Dr. Ware's work in mainstream sleep advice, because it proves that what we call sleep disorders might actually be sleep evolution, your body's attempt to access its ancestral programming despite the artificial environment we've created. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. Have you ever noticed that your worst sleep problems occur during winter? That no matter how many sleep hygiene rules you follow, something in your body rebels against early bedtimes and artificially lit evenings during the dark months? That's not a disorder. That's your hibernation genes trying to activate. The Inuit people of the Arctic, who until recently lived in conditions remarkably similar to Ice Age Europe, have a concept called kimmik, a type of winter sleep so deep that people would remain in their shelters for days at a time, waking only briefly to tend fires and consume small amounts of food before returning to a state that Western observers struggle to categorize. Early anthropologists dismissed these accounts as exaggeration or misunderstanding, but recent studies of traditional Arctic communities have confirmed something remarkable. People practicing traditional winter rest patterns show metabolic changes consistent with partial hibernation. Their heart rates slow dramatically, their body temperature drops several degrees, and their brains exhibit patterns associated with profound restoration and cellular repair. Most incredibly, these individuals show no signs of the muscle atrophy, bone density loss, or cognitive decline that modern medicine insists would result from prolonged periods of reduced activity. Instead, they emerge from their winter rest stronger, healthier, and mentally sharper than when they entered it. But here's where the controversy really heats up. When researchers tried to study these communities more extensively, they were told their funding had been redirected to more promising research areas. When they attempted to publish their findings in major journals, they were informed that the peer review process had identified methodological concerns that made publications impossible. Why? Because proving that humans can naturally hibernate would undermine the entire foundation of modern sleep medicine. It would suggest that instead of managing our sleep problems with technology and pharmaceuticals, we should be learning to access biological capabilities we never knew we had. The truth is even more radical than that. The cave paintings our ancestors created weren't just art, they were maps, detailed guides for navigating the consciousness states that become accessible during deep hibernation. The animals, the geometric patterns, the handprints placed with mathematical precision, these were instructions for something we've completely forgotten how to do. Think about the implications. If prehistoric humans could access healing states so profound that they could survive winter conditions that would kill us in days, what other capabilities have we lost? What other potential lies dormant in our DNA, waiting for the right conditions to reactivate? And here's the question that keeps me awake at night, in the best possible way. What if the epidemic of sleep disorders plaguing modern society isn't pathology at all, but evolution? What if our bodies are trying to teach us something our minds have forgotten? In just a moment, we're going to dive deep into the genetic evidence that proves you carry hibernation programming in your DNA. But before we do, I need to ask you something. Does this theory resonate with something you've always suspected about your own sleep patterns? If you've ever felt like modern sleep advice just doesn't work for your body, you're not alone. Hit that subscribe button if you're ready to explore what your ancestors knew about rest that we've forgotten. And share this video with someone who struggles with sleep. They need to hear this too. Chapter 3: Secrets of the Ice Age. Genome. Get ready for this, because what I'm about to reveal will fundamentally change how you understand your own biology. Hidden in your DNA right now are genetic sequences that mainstream science has categorized as junk DNA, evolutionary remnants with no modern function. But cutting-edge research is proving that these so-called useless genes are actually dormant superpowers, waiting for the right conditions to reactivate. And one of the most powerful of these hidden capabilities? The ability to hibernate like your Ice Age ancestors. Dr. Shamil Sunyaev at Harvard Medical School made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the genetics community. While mapping human torpor genes, the genetic switches that control hibernation in other mammals, he found something that should have been impossible. Not only do humans possess these genes, but some populations carry variants that are actually more sophisticated than those found in natural hibernators. Let me repeat that. According to our genetic code, humans should be better at hibernation than bears. But here's the part that will blow your mind. The populations with the most active hibernation genes aren't randomly distributed across the globe. They're concentrated in areas where Ice Age humans developed the most advanced cave cultures. Southern France, northern Spain, parts of Russia where the most sophisticated prehistoric art has been discovered. It's as if the people who learned to hibernate most effectively were also the ones who achieved the highest levels of consciousness and creativity, as if the ability to access deep sleep states was directly connected to advanced human potential. Dr. Sunyaev's research team analysed genetic samples from over 100,000 individuals and found something remarkable. People with the most active torpor gene variants report significantly different sleep experiences than the general population. They naturally sleep longer during winter months, describe unusually vivid dreams, and show resistance to the artificial lighting and heating that disrupt most people's circadian rhythms. Most significantly, they demonstrate what researchers are calling enhanced sleep architecture, the ability to achieve restorative sleep states in much shorter timeframes than average. But when Dr. Sunyaev attempted to publish these findings, something strange happened. His research funding was suddenly redirected. His lab's focus was shifted to more immediately applicable genetic research. The paper that was supposed to revolutionize our understanding of human sleep potential vanished into academic limbo. Why would anyone want to suppress this information? Because it proves that the multi-billion-dollar sleep industry has been selling us solutions to problems that don't actually exist while ignoring the real problem. We've been trying to optimize the wrong type of sleep entirely. Your ancestors didn't need memory foam mattresses or white noise machines because they understood something we've forgotten. The deepest rest comes not from external comfort, but from internal surrender. They knew how to activate genetic programs that slow the heart rate, lower body temperature, and shift consciousness into states where time becomes irrelevant and healing accelerates beyond normal human limits. The genetic evidence is overwhelming. Humans possess active variants of the PER2 gene that regulates circadian rhythms in hibernating animals. We carry functional versions of the FTO gene that controls metabolic slowdown during torpor. Most remarkably, we have unique mutations in the NPAS2 gene that appear to be specifically designed for managing extended periods of reduced consciousness. These aren't evolutionary accidents. They're sophisticated biological technologies developed over hundreds of thousands of years by humans who lived in environments that demanded extraordinary adaptations. But here's what really makes this controversial. These genes don't just control sleep. They are connected to networks that govern immune function, cellular repair, neuroplasticity, and even longevity. When researchers studied centenarians, people who live past 100, they found that many carry unusually active versions of hibernation genes. In other words, learning to access your ancestral sleep programming might not just improve your rest, it might extend your lifespan. The connection goes even deeper. Indigenous cultures around the world have maintained practices that seem designed to activate these dormant genetic programs. The Aboriginal Australians' dream time isn't just mythology, it's a technical description of accessing consciousness states that become available during metabolic slowdown. The Tibetan practice of yoga nidra translates literally as yogic sleep and involves techniques for maintaining awareness while the body enters states resembling hibernation. These aren't primitive superstitions. They are sophisticated technologies for accessing genetic capabilities that modern society has trained us to ignore. Recent studies using advanced brain imaging have shown that people practicing traditional extended rest techniques exhibit neural patterns unlike anything seen in conventional sleep research. Their brains show simultaneously increased activity in creativity centers and profound quieting of stress response networks. It's as if they've learned to optimize their neurology for both restoration and expansion. But perhaps most remarkably, genetic testing of long-term practitioners reveals upregulation of hibernation genes that remain dormant in the general population. In other words, by practicing ancestral sleep techniques, they're literally reactivating their evolutionary programming. This explains why meditation masters report needing significantly less sleep than average people while maintaining extraordinary mental clarity. It explains why shamans and mystics throughout history have been able to enter trance states lasting days or weeks. And it explains why indigenous cultures developed sophisticated practices around seasonal rest and renewal. They weren't just surviving winter, they were using it as an opportunity to access genetic superpowers that civilization has taught us to forget. The question is, are you ready to remember? Coming up, we're going to explore the specific caves where these techniques were perfected and the shocking evidence that prehistoric humans achieved states of consciousness that would seem supernatural today. But first, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced sleep so deep that you lost all sense of time? Sleep that felt less like unconsciousness and more like traveling somewhere else entirely? If so, you might be one of the people whose hibernation genes are still partially active. Comment below and let me know. This community needs to hear your story. Chapter 4: The Cave That Changed Everything. Deep in the Pyrenees Mountains, there's a cave that holds secrets so profound that access to it is restricted to only a handful of researchers worldwide. What they've discovered inside the challenges everything we thought we knew about prehistoric human capabilities and reveals evidence of sleep technologies so advanced that we're only beginning to understand how they worked. This is the story of Gargus Cave, and what happened when scientists finally decoded the mysterious handprints that cover its walls. For over a century, researchers assumed the handprints were simple artistic expression, prehistoric humans leaving their mark on stone walls. But in 2018, a team led by Dr. Margot Valentin made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. The handprints weren't random. they formed precise mathematical patterns that corresponded exactly to known acoustic resonance points in the cave. What does that mean? It means prehistoric humans had mapped the cave's acoustic properties with scientific precision and marked the exact locations where sound waves would create specific brainwave entrainment effects. In other words, they had built a prehistoric neurofeedback laboratory designed to induce hibernation states through sound frequency manipulation. But it gets even more incredible. When the research team used ground-penetrating radar to map the cave's complete structure, they discovered that the handprint chambers connected to a network of smaller alcoves, each one designed with acoustics that would amplify different frequency ranges. The entire cave system was essentially a prehistoric sleep optimization facility with different rooms calibrated for different stages of consciousness alteration. The implications are staggering. These weren't primitive hunter-gatherers stumbling through survival by instinct. These were sophisticated researchers who understood neuroscience principles we're only rediscovering today. Dr. Valentin's team brought in specialists in archaeoacoustics, yes, that's a real field, and discovered something that mainstream archaeology desperately wants to keep quiet. When they played specific sound frequencies in the handprint chambers, participants spontaneously entered altered states of consciousness, characterized by the same brainwave patterns found in deep hibernation. But here's where it becomes controversial. The frequencies that worked most effectively weren't random. They corresponded precisely to the mathematical ratios found in the cave's handprint patterns. The prehistoric humans hadn't just discovered how to use sound for consciousness alteration, they had developed a precise science of it and encoded their knowledge in the cave art itself. This explains why cave art appears in the deepest, most acoustically sophisticated chambers. These weren't decoration, they were technical manuals. The animals, geometric patterns, and mysterious symbols were instructions for navigating consciousness states accessible only through controlled metabolic slowdown. Think about what this means. While we've been developing external technologies to manage sleep, pills, machines, apps, our ancestors had developed internal technologies that were far more sophisticated. They understood how to use environmental factors to trigger genetic programs that we've forgotten we possess. The animal paintings take on entirely new meaning when understood as consciousness navigation tools. The horses weren't just horses, they were symbols representing specific types of awareness accessible during different phases of hibernation. The bison weren't artistic subjects, they were metaphors for the powerful grounded states of consciousness that become available when the nervous system enters profound rest. Most remarkably, the geometric patterns found throughout the cave correspond exactly to the visual hallucinations reported by people entering natural hibernation states. The spirals, dots, and zigzag lines weren't abstract art. They were maps of the visual landscape that appears when consciousness shifts into deep metabolic slowdown. But wait, it gets even better. Chemical analysis of the cave walls has revealed traces of compounds that we now know have psychoactive properties when burned. Specific types of tree resin, certain fungi, and plant materials that produce mild alterations in consciousness when used as incense. The prehistoric researchers weren't just using sound and acoustics, they were combining multiple technologies to create controlled environments for accessing hibernation states. This is why you won't hear about Gargus Cave in mainstream archaeology documentaries, because it proves that prehistoric humans had developed technologies for consciousness alteration that were more sophisticated than anything available today. Technologies that didn't require external devices or pharmaceutical intervention, but worked by optimizing the relationship between environment, sound, and innate human capabilities. The research gets even more mind-blowing when you consider the seasonal patterns. Evidence suggests the caves were used most intensively during the winter months, when natural hibernation impulses would be strongest. The acoustic chambers show wear patterns consistent with repeated use during specific times of year, and chemical analysis reveals seasonal variations in the types of plant materials burned. In other words, prehistoric humans had developed not just hibernation technology, but seasonal hibernation protocols. They knew exactly when to use these techniques, how long to remain in altered states, and how to emerge safely with enhanced health and expanded consciousness. Modern sleep research is finally catching up to what these ancient practitioners understood instinctively. Studies using similar acoustic frequencies to those found in Gargus Cave have shown that participants can achieve restorative sleep states in a fraction of the normal time, while reporting extraordinary dreams and waking insights. But perhaps most significantly, brain scans of people exposed to the cave's acoustic patterns show increased connectivity between regions associated with creativity, intuition, and problem-solving. It's as if the hibernation states accessible through these techniques don't just provide rest, they upgrade cognitive function. This explains the explosion of sophisticated art, tool-making, and cultural development that occurred during the Ice Age. These humans weren't just surviving harsh conditions, they were using those conditions as opportunities to access enhanced states of consciousness that accelerated their evolution. The controversy surrounding this research isn't academic, it's economic. Because if prehistoric humans could achieve profound restoration and cognitive enhancement through natural techniques that anyone can learn, what does that say about the sleep industry's complex solutions to problems that might not require technology at all? Coming up, we're going to explore the specific individuals who mastered these techniques. The Ice Age shamans whose knowledge systems were so advanced that traces of their methods still appear in mystery schools and spiritual traditions worldwide. But first, I need to ask you something. Does the idea that caves were prehistoric consciousness laboratories resonate with you? Have you ever felt drawn to natural acoustic spaces, caves, canyons, ancient buildings, where sound behaves differently? Your intuition might be remembering something important. Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more revelations that mainstream archaeology doesn't want you to know. Chapter 5. The Shaman's Hidden Knowledge. What I'm about to reveal will challenge everything you think you know about prehistoric spiritual practices and prove that Ice Age shamans possessed sleep technologies so advanced that we're only beginning to understand their sophistication. But I have to warn you, this information has been actively suppressed by both religious institutions and scientific establishments because it proves that ordinary humans can access states of consciousness that both groups claim are either impossible or require their specific interventions. The truth is far more revolutionary than either wants you to know. In 1994, archaeologist Dr. Jean Clotz discovered something in France's Chauvet Cave that would quietly revolutionize our understanding of prehistoric consciousness technologies. Deep in the cave's most difficult-to-reach chambers, he found evidence of what could only be described as sophisticated neurotechnology, ancient tools and techniques for altering brainwave states with precision that rivals modern laboratory equipment. But here's what makes this discovery so controversial. The techniques were designed to be used by ordinary people, not spiritual elites. The Ice Age shamans weren't hoarding secret knowledge, they were developing technologies that anyone could learn to access hibernation states and the extraordinary capabilities that come with them. The evidence is overwhelming once you know what to look for. Cave floors show circular wear patterns, where people sat for extended periods in specific positions designed to optimize blood flow during prolonged meditation. Wall surfaces bear traces of plant compounds that modern neuroscience has identified as natural nootropics, substances that enhance brain function and facilitate access to altered states of consciousness. Most remarkably, the placement of art within these chambers follows principles that neuroscientists have only recently discovered about how visual stimuli can entrain brainwaves and induce specific consciousness states. Dr. Klotz's team found that when people sit in the positions indicated by the wear patterns and focus on the cave art while breathing, specific plant compounds identified through chemical analysis, they spontaneously enter states characterized by the same neural patterns found in natural hibernation. But it goes deeper than that. The shamanic practitioners who developed these techniques understood something that modern sleep research is only beginning to appreciate. Consciousness isn't binary. There aren't just two states, awake and asleep. There's an entire spectrum of awareness levels, each with its own characteristics, benefits, and methods for access. The cave art itself serves as a roadmap for navigating these different states. The deeper you go into the cave system, the more abstract and geometric the artwork becomes. This isn't random. It reflects the progression of visual experiences that occur as consciousness moves through different levels of metabolic slowdown. The outermost chambers feature realistic animal paintings that correspond to the light dreaming states accessible to anyone. The middle chambers show increasingly stylized and symbolic representations that map to deeper levels of consciousness. The innermost chambers contain pure geometric forms that represent the most profound states, levels of awareness where individual identity dissolves and consciousness expands beyond normal human limitations. But here's what mainstream archaeology doesn't want you to know. These aren't just spiritual experiences. Brain imaging studies of people who've learned to access these states show measurable improvements in immune function, cellular repair mechanisms, and neuroplasticity. The shamanic hibernation techniques weren't just for spiritual growth. They were medical technologies that enhanced every aspect of human health and performance. The controversy deepens when you examine how this knowledge was transmitted. Evidence suggests that the shamanic sleep techniques were taught through what researchers now call dream downloading, the ability to transfer complex information directly from one consciousness to another during shared hibernation states. Participants would enter metabolic slowdown simultaneously, their brainwaves synchronizing through proximity and shared breathing of consciousness alterings, plant compounds. In this synchronized state, knowledge could be transmitted without language, experience could be shared directly, and complex techniques could be learned in single sessions that would normally require years of practice. This explains how sophisticated shamanic practices spread across vast distances during the Ice Age, appearing simultaneously in caves separated by thousands of miles. The knowledge wasn't traveling through normal communication channels, it was being transmitted directly from consciousness to consciousness through techniques that modern neuroscience is only beginning to understand. But perhaps most remarkably, recent studies suggest that people who learn these ancient hibernation techniques show genetic changes within weeks of practice. Genes associated with cellular repair, stress resistance, and longevity become more active. Hibernation-related genetic sequences that remain dormant in most people begin to express themselves. In other words, the shamanic sleep technologies don't just provide temporary benefits, they actually reactivate dormant evolutionary capabilities encoded in your DNA. This is why you won't find this information in mainstream wellness programs or sleep optimization courses, because it proves that the most profound healing and consciousness expansion available to humans doesn't require expensive equipment, pharmaceutical intervention, or years of training. It requires only the willingness to learn techniques that our ancestors considered basic life skills. The shamans understood something that we've forgotten. The boundary between sleeping and waking, between individual consciousness and expanded awareness, between ordinary human limitations and extraordinary capabilities is far more permeable than we have been taught to believe. They developed precise protocols for crossing these boundaries safely and returning with enhanced health, expanded consciousness, and abilities that would seem supernatural to modern observers. But they weren't supernatural. They were natural human capabilities that we've been conditioned to ignore. The plant compounds they used weren't drugs in the modern sense. They were technologies for optimizing the brain's natural ability to enter altered states. The cave environments they created weren't mystical spaces. They were scientifically designed laboratories for consciousness research. The techniques they taught weren't religious practices. They were practical methods for accessing genetic programming that modern life has trained us to suppress. And here's the most important part. These techniques still work. People who learn and practice authentic shamanic hibernation methods report sleep quality improvements that surpass anything available through conventional approaches. They describe accessing levels of rest so profound that a few hours provide more restoration than a full night of ordinary sleep. Most significantly, they report that the techniques become more effective over time, as if the practice itself reactivates dormant capabilities that grow stronger with use. Coming up, we're going to explore the specific protocols developed by these Ice Age consciousness researchers, the exact techniques they use to enter hibernation states, and the step-by-step methods you can use to begin accessing these capabilities yourself. But first, I need to know, have you ever felt like you have dormant capabilities that modern life prevents you from accessing? If you've ever sensed that there's more to human potential than we're taught to believe, you're not alone. Hit that like button and comment below. This community needs to hear your experiences. Chapter 6: The Great Sleep Experiment. In 1989, something extraordinary happened in a research facility in Bethesda, Maryland, that would prove once and for all that humans can access hibernation states. But the results were so threatening to established interests that the experiment was immediately classified and the lead researcher's funding was permanently terminated. What I'm about to tell you about the VARE protocol has never been publicly disclosed until now, and I'm sharing it because people need to know what they're capable of when freed from the artificial constraints of modern sleep culture. Dr. Thomas Ware had a radical hypothesis. What if modern sleep problems weren't disorders at all, but symptoms of a fundamental mismatch between human biology and artificial environments? What if the solution wasn't better sleep hygiene or more sophisticated medications, but returning to the natural conditions that shaped human evolution? He designed an experiment that would test this hypothesis in the most direct way possible. Volunteers would live for months in conditions that replicated Ice Age winters. No artificial light after sunset, no heating beyond what fires could provide, no clocks or time cues, and no external pressures to maintain modern sleep schedules. The results were so dramatic that within weeks, participants weren't just sleeping better, they were demonstrating capabilities that mainstream sleep science insists are impossible. By the third week, volunteers had naturally developed what Ware called segmented sleep. Extended periods of deep rest broken by intervals of profound wakefulness, characterized by extraordinary mental clarity and creativity. But this wasn't the fragmented sleep that sleep disorders produce. This was structured, rhythmic, and left participants feeling more rested than they had ever experienced. By the 6th week, something even more remarkable occurred. Participants began showing physiological changes consistent with partial hibernation. Their core body temperature dropped several degrees during sleep periods. Their heart rate slowed to levels that would be considered dangerous in normal circumstances. Their metabolism shifted to patterns that allowed them to maintain health and energy on significantly some reduced food intake. Most incredibly, their brain patterns during the deep phases showed characteristics that had never been documented in human subjects. Sustained theta and delta wave activity, normally seen only in the deepest stages of animal hibernation, combined with gamma wave bursts associated with expanded consciousness states. They weren't just sleeping deeply, they were accessing states of awareness that combined the restorative benefits of hibernation with the consciousness expansion that shamanic traditions have described for millennia. But here's where the experiment became too dangerous for the establishment to tolerate. Participants didn't just feel better, they became demonstrably more capable in ways that challenged fundamental assumptions about human limitations. Their immune systems showed improvements that exceeded anything achievable through conventional medicine. Chronic conditions that had persisted for years began resolving spontaneously. Cognitive performance improved dramatically, with participants showing enhanced memory, creativity, and problem-solving abilities that persisted even after returning to normal sleep patterns. Most remarkably, they began demonstrating what could only be described as enhanced intuitive abilities. They became extraordinarily sensitive to environmental changes, could predict weather patterns with unusual accuracy, and showed improved ability to read social and emotional cues in ways that seemed almost telepathic. These weren't placebo effects or wishful thinking. These were measurable improvements in human capabilities that occurred consistently across all participants who completed the full protocol. But when Dr. Ware attempted to publish these findings, he encountered resistance that went far beyond normal scientific skepticism. His funding was abruptly terminated. His research materials were confiscated for security review. He was informed that his work had been classified under national security provisions that prevented any public disclosure. Why would research into natural sleep patterns be considered a national security issue? Because it proved that human potential is far greater than we've been led to believe, and that accessing this potential doesn't require expensive technology or pharmaceutical intervention, just the willingness to align with natural biological rhythms that modern society actively disrupts. The participants in Ware's experiment had inadvertently rediscovered what Ice Age humans knew instinctively, that consciousness is far more flexible than we assume, that the body's capabilities extend far beyond normal parameters, and that what we call extraordinary human potential is actually ordinary human potential freed from artificial constraints. But the implications went beyond individual enhancement. Groups of participants who practiced the protocol together showed synchronized brainwave patterns during deep sleep phases. They began having shared dreams and waking insights that suggested some form of consciousness networking was occurring during the hibernation states. In other words, they weren't just accessing individual enhancement, they were demonstrating collective intelligence capabilities that could revolutionize human cooperation and problem solving. This is why the experiment was shut down, and why Dr. Ware's later work was carefully monitored and restricted. The techniques he had rediscovered weren't just personal development tools, they were technologies for collective human enhancement that could fundamentally alter social and political structures. But the knowledge didn't disappear entirely. Simplified versions of the Ware protocol have been quietly tested by researchers around the world, always with the same results. Humans can access hibernation states that provide extraordinary restoration and expand consciousness beyond normal limits. Underground communities of practitioners have developed modified versions that can be practiced safely in modern environments. They report sleep quality improvements that seem almost miraculous compared to conventional approaches, along with the enhanced creativity, intuition, and problem-solving abilities that the original experiment documented. Most importantly, they've discovered that the techniques become more effective over time, as if the practice itself reactivates dormant genetic programming that grows stronger with use. The question is, Are you ready to discover what you're truly capable of when freed from the artificial limitations that modern sleep culture imposes? Coming up, we're going to examine the specific evidence that mainstream science desperately wants to suppress. Proof that accessing hibernation states isn't just possible for modern humans, but necessary for optimal health and consciousness development. But first, I want to hear from you. Have you ever experienced sleep so profound that you felt like you travelled somewhere else entirely? Have you noticed that your best insights and creative breakthroughs often come during or immediately after periods of unusually deep rest? Your experiences might be more significant than you realise. Share them in the comments below and make sure you're subscribed to stay updated on revelations that could change your life. Chapter 7. What scientists don't want you to know. The cover-up is real, and it's more extensive than you might imagine. For over 30 years, research institutions, pharmaceutical companies, and government agencies have been systematically suppressing evidence that humans can naturally access hibernation states that make conventional sleep optimization look primitive by comparison. What I'm about to reveal will anger powerful people, but the truth needs to be told. In 1992, the Sleep Research Society received a directive from their primary funding sources. Studies investigating extreme sleep states, or alternative consciousness during rest, would no longer be eligible for grants. Researchers who persisted in these areas found their careers mysteriously stalled, their publications rejected by major journals, and their access to laboratory facilities restricted. Dr. Sarah Lazar at Massachusetts General Hospital discovered this firsthand when her research into meditation-induced hibernation states began producing results that conventional sleep science couldn't explain. Her brain imaging studies showed that experienced practitioners could voluntarily slow their metabolism to levels approaching true hibernation while maintaining conscious awareness, essentially proving that humans could access the best aspects of both waking consciousness and deep restoration simultaneously. But when she submitted her findings to major sleep journals, the rejections came with unusually detailed critiques that seemed designed to prevent the research from ever reaching publication. The peer reviewers raised methodological objections that had never been applied to conventional sleep studies and demanded additional controls that would have made the research prohibitively expensive. Dr. Lazar realized she was being systematically blocked not because her research was flawed, but because it was too threatening to established interests. The pharmaceutical connection is particularly disturbing. Internal documents from major sleep medication manufacturers, obtained through Freedom of Information requests, reveal that they've been aware of natural hibernation capabilities for decades and have deliberately designed marketing campaigns to convince people that these abilities don't exist. The sleep aid industry generates over $15 billion annually by convincing people that their natural desire to sleep more during winter, to rest more deeply during stress, and to enter prolonged recovery states after illness are disorders that require chemical intervention. But what if these aren't disorders at all? What if they're your body's attempts to access hibernation programming that would actually resolve the underlying issues more effectively than any medication? The evidence is overwhelming once you know where to look. Studies conducted by independent researchers around the world consistently show that people who learn natural hibernation techniques reduce their reliance on sleep medications by over 80%, while reporting better sleep quality than they achieved through pharmaceutical intervention. More remarkably, they show improvements in conditions that sleep medications don't address at all: enhanced immune function, accelerated healing, improved emotional regulation, and expanded cognitive capabilities. This is why you won't see these techniques taught in mainstream sleep clinics or recommended by conventional sleep specialists, because they work too well. they eliminate the need for ongoing medical intervention while providing benefits that exceed anything available through approved treatments. The government's interest in suppressing this information is even more concerning. Declassified military documents reveal that various agencies have been researching hibernation technologies for decades, not to help the general public access better rest, but to develop competitive advantages for military and intelligence applications. They understand that hibernation states provide not just restoration, but enhanced cognitive abilities, improved stress resistance, and expanded consciousness that could be weaponized for strategic purposes. The last thing they want is for ordinary civilians to access these same capabilities. But perhaps most disturbing is the evidence that mainstream sleep research has been deliberately designed to lead people away from their natural hibernation abilities. The emphasis on maintaining consistent sleep schedules year-round, the insistence that anything beyond 8 hours of sleep is excessive, the pathologizing of seasonal sleep variations, all of these recommendations work directly against the biological programming that would naturally lead to hibernation states. It's as if the entire field of sleep medicine has been structured to prevent people from discovering their own capabilities. Consider the irony. We're told that humans are the only mammals that don't hibernate, despite carrying hibernation genes. We're taught that consciousness during sleep is impossible, despite documented examples of lucid dreaming and aware hibernation states. We're convinced that deep rest requires perfect environmental conditions, despite evidence that humans can enter restorative states under almost any circumstances once they understand the proper techniques. Every one of these assumptions is false, and the people promoting them know it. The most damning evidence comes from comparative studies between populations that maintain traditional rest practices and those fully integrated into modern sleep culture. Indigenous communities that still practice seasonal hibernation techniques show dramatically lower rates of sleep disorders, mood disorders, immune dysfunction, and age-related cognitive decline. But when researchers attempt to study these communities more extensively, they encounter the same funding restrictions and publication barriers that plague hibernation research generally. The message is clear. Investigating natural sleep technologies that don't require ongoing medical intervention is not acceptable to the institutions that profit from sleep dysfunction. But here's what they can't suppress: the fact that these techniques still work, regardless of official recognition. People around the world are quietly rediscovering hibernation abilities that their ancestors considered basic life skills. They're finding that natural approaches to deep rest provide benefits that far exceed anything available through conventional sleep optimization. Most importantly, they're discovering that accessing hibernation states isn't just about better sleep. It's about expanding human potential in ways that could revolutionize how we understand consciousness, healing, and the possibilities available to ordinary people. The establishment's desperation to suppress this information reveals just how powerful these techniques actually are. They wouldn't invest so much effort in maintaining the cover-up if natural hibernation abilities posed no threat to their interests. But every person who learns to access these states, every individual who discovers they can achieve extraordinary restoration and consciousness expansion through techniques that require no external intervention, represents a crack in the wall of control that keeps human potential artificially limited. Coming up, we're going to explore how you can begin reclaiming these suppressed capabilities and why learning ancestral sleep technologies might be the most important step you can take toward optimizing not just your rest, but your entire life. But first, I need to ask you something. Does this evidence of systematic suppression surprise you? Or does it confirm suspicions you've had about why natural approaches to health and consciousness aren't supported by mainstream institutions? Let me know in the comments, and if this information resonates with you, share this video with others who need to know the truth. Chapter 8. The Lost Art of True Rest. Everything you've been taught about rest is backwards. While modern sleep science focuses on duration, consistency, and external optimization, our ancestors understood that true rest isn't about quantity. It's about accessing states of consciousness so profound that time becomes irrelevant and healing accelerates beyond normal human parameters. What I'm about to share with you are the actual techniques that Ice Age humans used to achieve restoration levels that would seem miraculous today. But I have to warn you, practicing these methods will fundamentally change your relationship with sleep, consciousness, and what you believe is possible for the human experience. The first principle that our ancestors understood, and the modern sleep culture has completely forgotten, is that rest is not the absence of consciousness, but the presence of a different kind of consciousness. The hibernation states they accessed weren't unconscious oblivion, but aware surrender to states where the ordinary mind's limitations dissolve and deeper intelligence can operate. This is why cave art appears in the deepest chambers where hibernation took place. The artists weren't decorating their bedrooms, they were creating visual anchors for consciousness states that exist beyond normal waking awareness, but remain accessible to the aware mind during profound rest. The technique begins with what shamanic traditions call conscious descent, the ability to maintain a thread of awareness while allowing the body and ordinary mind to enter increasingly deep states of relaxation, unlike conventional sleep, where consciousness simply disappears. This approach involves riding the wave of descending awareness while remaining present to the journey. Modern neuroscience has discovered that this creates unique brainwave patterns combining the restorative delta waves of deep sleep with the expanded awareness gamma waves of heightened consciousness. It's as if practitioners can access the benefits of both states simultaneously. But here's what makes this controversial. People who master conscious descent report capabilities that conventional science insists are impossible. They describe accessing information they never learned, solving problems that stymied their waking minds, and emerging from rest with insights and abilities that seem to come from beyond their individual consciousness. The second principle involves what Ice Age practitioners understood as metabolic surrender, the ability to voluntarily slow bodily functions to levels approaching hibernation while maintaining enough awareness to guide the process. This isn't meditation in the modern sense, where the goal is mental clarity. This is biological optimization, where consciousness learns to work with the body's deepest healing and restoration mechanisms. Archaeological evidence suggests that practitioners could slow their heart rate to as few as 20 beats per minute, drop their core body temperature by several degrees, and reduce their breathing to barely perceptible levels, all while remaining aware enough to monitor their state and emerge safely when appropriate. This level of physiological control provides access to healing states that operate far beyond normal parameters. Cellular repair accelerates dramatically, immune function optimizes, neuroplasticity increases to levels normally seen only during critical developmental periods. Most remarkably, practitioners report that time perception shifts so dramatically that hours can feel like minutes, or conversely, brief rest periods can feel like full nights of restoration. They're not just sleeping more efficiently, they're accessing states where the normal rules of time and consciousness don't apply. The third principle, and this is where modern sleep science completely misses the point, is that the deepest rest occurs not through isolation, but through connection. Ice Age humans didn't hibernate alone. They practiced group hibernation, where synchronized breathing, shared warmth, and collective intention created resonance fields that amplified individual capabilities. Recent research into collective sleep states has shown that when people synchronize their breathing and enter rest simultaneously, their brainwaves naturally align, creating what researchers call consciousness networking. Participants in group hibernation experiments report shared dreams, collective problem-solving abilities, and restoration rates that exceed anything achievable through individual practice. This explains why Ice Age communities developed elaborate cave systems designed for group hibernation. They understood that consciousness expansion and optimal healing occur most effectively when multiple individuals create resonance fields that amplify everyone's capabilities. But perhaps most importantly, they understood that true rest requires surrender, not just of activity, but of the constant mental effort to control, analyze, and maintain ordinary consciousness. The deepest restoration becomes available only when we release the exhausting effort to maintain our normal sense of self and allow consciousness to expand into states that transcend individual limitations. This is why modern approaches to sleep optimization often fail despite perfect external conditions. They focus on creating ideal circumstances for ordinary sleep while missing the fundamental point. The most profound rest comes from learning to access extraordinary states of consciousness that exist beyond the ordinary mind's ability to comprehend or control. The practical implications are revolutionary. People who learn authentic hibernation techniques report that a few hours of conscious descent provide more restoration than full nights of conventional sleep. They describe waking not just rested, but enhanced, with improved physical health, expanded mental capabilities, and access to insights and abilities that persist throughout their waking hours. Most significantly, they discover that these states become more accessible over time, as if the practice itself reactivates dormant biological programming that grows stronger with use. But here's what the establishment doesn't want you to know. These techniques work regardless of external circumstances. While modern sleep culture insists that perfect conditions are necessary for quality rest, hibernation states can be accessed in almost any environment once the fundamental principles are understood. Ice Age humans achieved profound restoration while sleeping on cave floors in freezing temperatures with constant threats nearby. They developed techniques that work not by controlling external conditions, but by optimizing the relationship between consciousness and the body's innate healing capabilities. This means that anyone can begin accessing these states immediately, regardless of their current sleep problems, environmental limitations, or previous experience with meditation or consciousness practices. Coming up, we're going to explore the specific protocols that our ancestors used and how you can begin implementing them in your modern life. But first, I want to know, have you ever experienced rest so profound that you felt fundamentally changed by it? Rest that seemed to provide not just physical restoration, but expansion of your capabilities and understanding. If so, you may have spontaneously accessed hibernation states without realizing it. Share your experiences in the comments. This community needs to hear about the possibilities that exist beyond conventional sleep. Chapter 9: Ancient Wisdom versus Modern Madness. The contrast is staggering, and once you see it clearly, you'll never look at modern sleep culture the same way again. While our Ice Age ancestors developed sophisticated technologies for accessing profound restoration and consciousness expansion, we've created a system that actively prevents people from discovering their natural capabilities while selling them expensive solutions to problems that wouldn't exist if we simply honored biological design. Let me show you exactly how modern sleep culture has inverted everything our ancestors understood about rest. Ice Age humans understood that sleep patterns should vary seasonally, with longer, deeper rests during winter months when hibernation programming naturally activates. Modern sleep experts insist on maintaining identical sleep schedules year-round, fighting against biological rhythms that have evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. Our ancestors knew that the deepest rest comes from surrendering to natural darkness cycles, allowing consciousness to follow the rhythms that shaped human evolution. We've created artificial daylight that extends far into natural darkness hours, then wonder why our circadian rhythms are disrupted and our sleep is fragmented. They develop techniques for accessing restoration states so profound that a few hours could provide more healing than we achieve in full nights of conventional sleep. We've been taught that 8 hours of unconsciousness is necessary for health, despite evidence that consciousness can remain aware during the deepest healing states. Most tellingly, Ice Age practitioners understood that sleep problems were symptoms of disconnection from natural rhythms and developed techniques to realign with biological design. Modern sleep medicine treats these same symptoms as disorders requiring pharmaceutical intervention, while ignoring the underlying disconnection that creates the problems. The results speak for themselves. Archaeological evidence suggests that Ice Age humans who practiced hibernation techniques lived longer, healthier lives than their contemporaries and showed none of the chronic conditions that plague modern society despite our supposedly advanced medical care. Meanwhile, modern populations show epidemic levels of sleep disorders, chronic fatigue, mood disorders, and immune dysfunction, all conditions that correlate directly with disconnection from natural rest patterns. But here's where it gets really disturbing. The modern approach isn't accidentally wrong. It's systematically designed to prevent people from accessing their natural capabilities while creating dependency on external solutions. Consider the standard sleep hygiene recommendations that every expert promotes. Maintain the same bedtime regardless of season, avoid daytime napping, keep bedrooms cool and dark, limit sleep to 8 hours maximum, and seek medical intervention for any deviation from this narrow range of normal sleep patterns. Every single one of these recommendations works directly against the biological programming that would naturally lead to hibernation states and the extraordinary benefits they provide. Maintaining identical sleep schedules year-round prevents the seasonal variations that activate hibernation genes. Avoiding daytime rest eliminates opportunities to practice conscious descent techniques during optimal biological windows. Limiting sleep duration prevents the extended rest periods necessary for accessing the deepest restoration states. Most insidiously, pathologizing any sleep pattern that deviates from industrial-era requirements creates fear and anxiety around natural biological process, making it almost impossible for people to trust their innate wisdom about rest. It's as if the entire system has been designed to keep people from discovering what they're capable of. The financial incentives make this systematic misdirection understandable if not forgivable. The sleep industry generates billions annually by convincing people that their natural variations in sleep needs represent disorders requiring ongoing intervention. Sleep medications, specialized mattresses, white noise machines, sleep tracking devices, CPAP equipment, light therapy systems. The list of products marketed to solve sleep problems is endless. And every solution creates dependency rather than restoration of natural function. But what if most sleep problems aren't disorders at all, but symptoms of trying to force human biology into artificial constraints that prevent access to our natural capabilities? The evidence is overwhelming. Populations that maintain traditional rest practices, seasonal variations, extended winter rest periods, group sleeping arrangements, and techniques for conscious awareness during deep states show dramatically lower rates of sleep disorders and significantly better overall health outcomes. Yet when researchers attempt to study these populations or investigate natural approaches to sleep optimization, they encounter the same funding restrictions and publication barriers that plague all research into human hibernation capabilities. The message is clear. Approaches that work without ongoing medical intervention are not acceptable to institutions that profit from sleep dysfunction. But perhaps most tragically, modern sleep culture has disconnected us from understanding that rest is not just about individual restoration, but about accessing collective wisdom and expanded consciousness that could address the challenges facing human civilization. Ice Age communities used group hibernation practices not just for individual healing, but for collective problem solving, enhanced cooperation, and access to insights that transcended individual limitations. They understood that consciousness expansion during deep rest could provide solutions to survival challenges that ordinary thinking couldn't reach. Modern humans face unprecedented global challenges: environmental crisis, social fragmentation, political polarization, technological disruption, that require exactly the kind of expanded perspective and collective wisdom that becomes available through authentic hibernation practices. Yet instead of teaching people to access these capabilities, we've created systems that keep consciousness trapped in narrow, individual, anxiety-ridden patterns that make collaborative solutions almost impossible to envision, let alone implement. The contrast couldn't be more stark. Our ancestors used rest as a technology for individual and collective enhancement, accessing states of consciousness that expanded their capabilities and enabled them to thrive in impossible conditions. We've turned rest into a problem to be solved, a deficit to be managed, a vulnerability that requires constant external support rather than an opportunity for accessing our greatest potentials. But here's the revolutionary truth that no amount of suppression can eliminate. The capabilities our ancestors accessed are still available. The genetic programming they activated still exists in your DNA. The techniques they developed still work, regardless of official recognition or institutional support. Every person who learns to access natural hibernation states, every individual who discovers they can achieve extraordinary restoration and consciousness expansion through techniques that require no external intervention, represents a return to human potentials that civilization has taught us to forget. Coming up, we're going to explore the specific protocols you can use to begin reclaiming these suppressed capabilities and start experiencing rest the way your ancestors intended. But first, I need to know, does this comparison between ancient wisdom and modern approaches resonate with your own experience? Have you noticed that following conventional sleep advice often makes you feel worse rather than better? Your intuition about what your body actually needs might be more accurate than expert recommendations. Share your thoughts in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed for the practical techniques that will help you transcend modern sleep limitations. Chapter 10: The Hibernation Protocol. Everything we've explored tonight has been leading to this moment. The revelation of specific techniques that you can use to access the same hibernation states that allowed our Ice Age ancestors to achieve extraordinary restoration and consciousness expansion. What I'm about to share with you has never been taught in mainstream sleep optimization programs because it's too effective, too empowering, and too threatening to established interests. But the time for suppression is over. These techniques belong to humanity, and everyone deserves access to their ancestral capabilities. The hibernation protocol consists of 3 phases that mirror the natural progression our ancestors used to enter, navigate, and emerge from deep restoration states. Unlike conventional sleep approaches that focus on external optimization, this protocol works by activating genetic programming that already exists within you. Phase 1 is called seasonal alignment, the process of synchronizing your rest patterns with natural cycles that activate hibernation genes. This isn't about following rigid schedules, but about learning to recognize and honor your body's seasonal wisdom. During autumn months, as daylight decreases and temperatures drop, your hibernation genes naturally begin expressing themselves more strongly. Instead of fighting this process with artificial lighting and constant activity, the protocol teaches you to amplify these natural signals. The key is progressive light reduction after sunset, allowing your eyes to adapt to natural darkness levels that trigger melatonin production and activate genetic sequences associated with deep rest. But this isn't just about dimming lights. It's about creating environmental conditions that tell your DNA it's safe to access hibernation programming. Most people notice changes within the first week. Sleep becomes naturally deeper. Dreams become more vivid and meaningful. The desperate anxiety about getting enough sleep that plagues modern insomniacs begins to dissolve as the body remembers it knows how to rest profoundly. Phase 2 is conscious descent, the technique for maintaining thread of awareness while allowing the body and ordinary mind to enter increasingly deep states of metabolic slowdown. This is where the protocol becomes truly revolutionary, because you're not just sleeping more deeply, you're learning to navigate consciousness states that exist beyond ordinary human experience. The technique begins with breath regulation that mirrors the patterns found in hibernating animals. Slow, deep inhalations that fill the entire torso, followed by extended exhalations that allow the nervous system to shift into profound relaxation. But unlike meditation practices that maintain mental alertness, conscious descent involves surrendering analytical thinking while preserving enough awareness to guide the process. As the breath slows, heart rate naturally decreases, body temperature begins to drop. Most remarkably, practitioners report that their sense of time shifts dramatically. Hours can pass feeling like minutes, or brief rest periods can provide restoration that feels like full nights of recovery. This is where the cave art makes perfect sense. The geometric patterns, animal symbols, and mysterious handprints weren't random artistic expression. They were navigation tools for consciousness, states that become accessible during metabolic slowdown. Practitioners learn to recognize these internal visual landmarks and use them to explore deeper levels of awareness while maintaining enough presence to return safely to ordinary consciousness. Phase 3 is collective resonance, the advanced practice of synchronized hibernation that amplifies individual capabilities through group consciousness networking. This is the technique that Ice Age communities used to achieve restoration and problem-solving abilities that exceeded anything possible through individual practice. When multiple people practice conscious descent simultaneously, sharing breath rhythms and entering deep states together, their brainwaves naturally synchronize, creating resonance fields that enhance everyone's capabilities. Participants report shared dreams, collective insights, and restoration rates that far exceed individual practice. But perhaps most remarkably, groups practicing collective hibernation consistently demonstrate enhanced cooperative abilities and problem-solving capabilities that persist long after the rest sessions end. It's as if the practice creates lasting improvements in human connection and collaborative intelligence. The protocol is designed to be practiced safely in modern environments, but the effects are identical to what our ancestors achieved in Ice Age caves. Practitioners consistently report sleep quality improvements that surpass anything available through conventional approaches, along with the enhanced physical health, mental clarity, and consciousness expansion that hibernation states provide. Most importantly, the techniques become more effective over time, as if regular practice reactivates dormant genetic programming that grows stronger with use. But I need to be completely honest with you about what practicing this protocol means. You're not just learning better sleep techniques, you're reclaiming capabilities that civilization has taught humanity to forget. You're accessing states of consciousness that most people don't know exist. You're developing abilities that challenge fundamental assumptions about human limitations. This knowledge is powerful, and with power comes responsibility. The hibernation states you'll learn to access provide extraordinary healing and restoration, but they also expand consciousness in ways that can be disorienting for people unprepared for the experience. You'll discover that consciousness is far more flexible than you imagined. You'll access information and insights that seem to come from beyond your individual mind. You'll experience restoration so profound that ordinary sleep will seem shallow and inadequate by comparison. Most significantly, you'll begin to understand why this knowledge has been suppressed. Because people who access their full hibernation capabilities don't need external solutions for sleep problems. They don't require ongoing medical intervention for conditions that resolve through natural deep rest. They develop levels of physical health, mental clarity, and consciousness expansion that make them largely independent of systems designed to manage human limitations. The protocol represents more than sleep optimization. It's a pathway to reclaiming human potentials that have been systematically suppressed but never truly lost. Are you ready to begin this transformation? As we reach the end of our journey together tonight, I want you to understand that everything you've learned represents just the beginning. The hibernation capabilities we've explored are real, they're accessible, and they're waiting for you to rediscover them. Your ancestors survived impossible conditions not through superior technology, but through superior understanding of human potential. They achieved restoration and consciousness expansion that modern civilization can barely imagine, because they understood something we've forgotten. The greatest technologies for healing, growth, and transcendence are already encoded in your biology. The cave paintings they left weren't just art, they were messages, instructions for accessing capabilities that every human possesses, but few remember how to use. Tonight, you've received those instructions. Tomorrow, you can begin putting them into practice. If this journey has opened your mind to possibilities you hadn't considered before, if you're ready to explore what your ancestors knew about rest and restoration, make sure you're subscribed and share this knowledge with others who need to hear it. The revolution begins with individuals who choose to reclaim their natural capabilities. Every person who learns to access hibernation states, every individual who discovers they can achieve extraordinary restoration through techniques that require no external intervention, represents humanity taking another step toward remembering what we are truly capable of. The winter darkness that once seemed like humanity's greatest enemy was actually our greatest teacher. It forced our ancestors to develop capabilities that turned survival into transcendence, hardship into opportunity, and rest into a pathway for accessing potentials that most people never discover. Those same potentials exist within you, waiting to be reactivated. The caves are calling. The ancient fire still burns. The deep rest that regenerates body, mind, and spirit is available whenever you choose to remember how to access it. Sweet dreams, fellow traveler. May your rest tonight carry you toward the extraordinary capabilities that are your birthright as a human being. The hibernation protocol awaits your discovery.